Hey everyone, I'm taking a look at this bow right here for my son. He is 3 years old, so he is very young and decently coordinated, but he has a huge interest in archery because I shoot a compound bow, I hunt, and from the time he was about 2 years old, he had this little suction cup bow, which I will definitely put a link to so you know what that looks like. And he just loved pulling it back and letting that little suction cup arrow fly and hit targets. And he did that for, the better part of a year around the house. We started off, shooting at the storm door window. It does come with a little target, so we shot at that a little bit. And he just loved it. He spends all kinds of time just walking around with this thing, pulling it back and letting that little suction cup arrow fly, and he loves it. But being that it was his 3rd birthday, I noticed he's getting more coordinated. The way he draws it back is starting to, look very consistent, and he's able to understand what I'm telling him. So I decided it's time to get him something for his birthday that shoots more like a real bow. This was not the first bow that I purchased, and this one right here is Diamond Atomic, and it's highly adjustable, very, very lightweight. So he's only like 35 pounds, and he can hold it up, he can draw it back. The first bow that I purchased for him for his birthday was by Archery, the Bear Brave. It claims to have adjustability from like 5 pounds to, let's say, 19 pounds, and the draw length from 13 to 19. But when you pull the bow back, where the let off happened was at 19 inches. So if he was pulling 13 inches, he was actually holding the whole weight that he was drawing. And it just didn't really seem to me like the kind of bow that I would want to shoot if I was a little child trying to learn. So I went ahead and spent about double the money on this, but it was well worth it because it's light enough for him to hold in his hand, and it's adjustable enough. You can see this draw length is very short, and that's done with modules. There's a lot of videos out there on how to adjust the bow, but it's really, really great for him to be able to actually shoot a bow that is real. It's a real compound bow. It has real let off, has a real sight, real pins, real peep sight. I put that in, and he gets that practice to really start honing in that repetitive procedure that you need when you're shooting a bow. So I wanted to just let you know that this is what he is, starting out with. This is his first bow that he's going to really, truly shoot some targets with, and try to improve his skills with. There's a couple things about this bow that I would definitely change right out of the packaging. One of them, if you can see here, and you probably can't because I have a terrible camera setup, but it's the sight has 2 pins. Okay, there's the pin that is in the middle that you actually use to aim with, and there's another pin for leveling, I think, or some other use over on the left side or the right side as you're looking at it. And what happens is little toddler man looks through the peep sight or looks down the string, whatever he's doing, and he gets those confused, and sometimes he shoots completely off target. And I think what I'm going to do for that, I was covering it with that piece of masking tape. I'm actually going to take a Sharpie or a piece of electrical tape and just cover that dot up, and it'll make this fiber optic a little more dim, but that shouldn't really affect what he's doing. It'll get plenty of light from the back. So I'll cover that up so it's less confusing for him. I would definitely go with a 1-pin sight if you're going to go with a sight for the bow for a toddler, because it's just too much for them to look at. Some of the lessons I've learned on this, and I'm going to set this bow down. So some of the lessons that I've learned since I, started teaching him was you want to keep it simple. Okay, so when I pulled this bow out, I knew that he wanted to be just like me. So what do I have? I have a kisser button, a peep sight, a release, a D-loop, everything. And I thought, okay, he's gonna lose his mind if he doesn't have everything the same as me. So I'll start him off just with everything. That was kind of a mistake because he's got enough attention span to pull it back and let it go safely. But if you try to tell him 6 different things to do, put the kisser button in your mouth, line your eye up with the peep sight, put the sight housing in that peep sight and the pin on the target, and then let it go while you're holding it on there, that's a lot of information. So you really have to start slow. One of the things that I would say to start with is get the child with the bow in their hands and teach them how to draw the bow safely with an arrow in it, and teach them that they never draw the bow without an arrow. And that's something you're gonna have to repeat over and over again. As soon as you go to pull those arrows out of the target, they're gonna be pulling on it. They wanna pull it back and look through it and pretend that they're doing what they just did 30 seconds ago. So the big thing is repetition. Start simple and repeat yourself like a broken record. Hey, don't pull the bow back without an arrow. It'll break the bow, it could hurt you. Don't do that. The second thing I would say is get their eye, whether you're using a peep sight or not, but get their eye looking across the string or through the peep sight and work on that. That should be step number 2. Before you start really worried about anchor point and all that, just get them looking at the sight properly. Make sure that if it has anything confusing, if it has a bunch of pins, maybe take some of them off if you can, and go from there. I did buy this really tiny TrueFire release. You can see that it's got a really, really small adjustable release, so that the trigger will fit back into their hand. And this has been okay for him. I put a D-loop on the bow. I since took it off. But the problem with a release aid like this, you would probably want to go, if you're going to have your toddler 3-4 years old shoot a bow with a release, get something that has a spring-loaded trigger so that when you pull it back, it opens up. When you let it go, it actually closes on its own. Because what they have to do is open it up, stick it on the D-loop, and then push this forward. And it just becomes really tough to explain to them how that works, and you spend a whole bunch more time putting the release on the bow than you actually do shooting. So I would say hide from the release in the beginning if you can. Get them shooting with their fingers, because you're going to get a lot more arrows off and spend a lot less time kind of messing around with the release aid. Another thing I would say is don't go too aggressive with the poundage. Even if they can pull it back, make sure it's comfortable for them so they can shoot a lot of shots. My son likes to shoot about 50 arrows at a time, so if your poundage is too high in the beginning, that's really going to affect their ability to shoot for a long period of time. They're going to get tired. They're going to have to set the bow down and rest. And when you see them start showing signs of fatigue, definitely get them to rest, because there's no sense in having them shoot when they're so tired they can't hold it on the target. But again, simplicity is key for these kids. If they're 3 years old, you know, maybe they don't even fully talk yet. My son talks pretty well, and he understands pretty well, but he's also very stubborn. So that's one of the things that I have to kind of work through is the stubbornness and his ability to really focus and do the things I'm telling him. Sometimes I tell him, hey, shoot this target, and he ends up shooting into the weeds just because he's not listening. And you just have to have a lot of patience, but after 2 weeks of shooting, I'm happy to say that he can definitely hit what he's aiming at, if he's aiming at it. But he's having a lot of fun, and he's passionate about it. He wakes up, he wants to watch YouTube videos of children shooting bows, which is the reason I'm starting this channel, is to get video footage of him shooting and his progress. And along the way, I want to document what I'm doing to teach him these things. I'm not a professional archery instructor. I've been shooting a bow for like 20 years, so I know how to do it, but I'm definitely not in any way an archery instructor. So I'm just kind of a do-it-yourself dad trying to get his kid to be passionate about something that I am. And I think if you just take the time to be patient with them and you know, let the process kind of happen and try not to force the perfection too much, just let them pull it back and shoot it. Eventually you'll notice that they're going to start getting tighter groups. They're going to start hitting every time. They're going to want to shoot at the same target every time. So that's really the very beginnings of what I've learned so far. The other thing is, and I'll stop this video and I'll start up another clip, but when you get this bow, it's going to come with some diamond arrows. They're pre-cut. The insert is like a one-piece field point insert, so you can't unscrew this and put a different tip in. It's very blunt, very dull, so that's great for safety. Not so great for if your child is pulling 6 pounds or 7 pounds and getting the arrow to stick in the target. So what I would say is, if you want to pick up an archery target for your toddler, make sure it is a foam target. I got a youth target that's kind of like a bag target. It says up to 35 pounds. I thought perfect. It's gonna keep the arrow, allow the arrow to stick in and not bounce off, but that's just not the case. So I have a block target, which is just like a broadhead target, and that the arrows will actually stick in most of the time. But if you can find one of those 2-3 inch thick foam archery targets that would definitely not withstand a full-size compound bow, but would, you know, at least accept the arrow so that it sticks in, that'll definitely give the child a lot more confidence. They don't like to see the arrow bounce off when they see dad's arrow stick in from however far he shoots. So with those things in mind, I think you could be off to a great start. And again, the biggest thing to really think about when you're doing this is you're using a weapon with a child that is very young, and it's dangerous. If you have pets, if you have siblings running around, you can't just let them go and do their own thing. You can't let them, you know, stand there with a bow and knock it up and do everything themselves. You have to stand there with them. You have to be very safe about it. So make sure that you're treating this sport very seriously, because even though the arrow's not flying that fast, it could still cause a lot of damage and a lot of injury to people and pets and property. So keep that in mind. Always keep someone with the child when the arrow is knocked, when they're holding the bow. You don't want to leave them by themselves too much, especially if they have the urge to draw the bow back without an arrow, and if they dry fire it. There's not a whole lot of energy in a very, very low poundage bow, so it probably would not do very much at all. Maybe the string would come off, but get that burnt into their head from the time that they're starting out at 3 years old, that you never dry fire a bow. And really, it's best not to even draw a bow without an arrow in and pointed at a safe direction, just like you would with a firearm. Okay, so I hope that this video has been somewhat educational for you. This is my first YouTube video, my first take at staring at the camera, so I'm probably moving around too much. But if you did like this video, please subscribe, please give it a thumbs up, and leave some comments. Let me know if you have any ways you could help me better teach my son, because ultimately what we want to do is get youth involved in archery, keep them involved, keep them interested, and really enjoy our time in the outdoors with them. So until next time, thank you.